Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be back to Raisina Dialogue. In Europe, everybody rushes to Davos, but for me, being here with you, I think it's much more important. Last year, I came as a Spanish foreign minister, and this year I have the pleasure to participate in my new capacity of High Representative of the European Union for Foreign and Security Policy. And that is precisely what I would like to talk today. The common foreign policy and defense and security policy that 28, well, now 27 European Union member states have decided to build. Common doesn't mean unique. A common policy means that each one can have its own policy and sharing a common understanding. But a common understanding of foreign policy is difficult to build because a country foreign policy is a way to project its own identity to the outside world. And it's a difficulty for the Europeans. It puts us in a difficult situation because we are still a player in search of identity. We still don't know exactly what kind of role we want to play. Let me elaborate a little bit more about that. We Europeans, we should be proud of what we have achieved. From the ashes of the World War II, we built a system that combines political freedom, economic prosperity, and social cohesion. One of the best in the world. We suppressed borders among us, borders that were the scars that history had left in the skin of our continent. And we are together in a union because we agree that we unite us is much more important than what divides us. But however, I also have to recognize that today we are facing a nationalist and populist comeback that can put into question these achievements. Ladies and gentlemen, after 3 wars between Germany and France in the short period of 70 years, the same number of years that India became independent, the European Union has created to prevent us from using the power, the idea of power, against each other. The European Union was built on the basis that not to use power. But today, this logic is no longer valid. And instead of curtailing our power, we should use our union to enhance it. Our historical project does not, as it often is being believed or presented, is not aimed at abolishing the sovereignty of European states in favor of a kind of super European state. It has an objective very precise, is to enable European states to do collectively what we cannot longer do alone. That is what Europe is all about, doing together what we can no longer do, each one of us, on our parts. It means to share sovereignty, but sometimes to have less formal sovereignty brings you the capacity of being more autonomous or have more real sovereignty in order to be able to take your own decisions. Let me put an example. In 2004, Spain sent troops to Iraq. But after the elections and the change of a government, the new prime minister decided to withdraw the Spanish troops. We did it, and nothing happened. Nothing happened because we had the euro as a currency. Because if we had had our old currency, the peseta, this peseta would have suffered devaluations after devaluations, suffering speculative attacks in the financial markets, and we should have forgotten about the idea of withdrawing our troops. So having less formal sovereignty, at the end, it brings you more real sovereignty. This teaches us that pooling our monetary policies gives us more capacity to have more power, more autonomy in the world. Trade is one of the best examples of how we, sharing a common European policy where the Commission negotiates on behalf of all member states, give us much more power in the world stage. Individually, most European states have relatively little weight in the world stage, but collectively, we are one of the world's largest trading blocs together with the States and China. I repeat, that's what Europe is all about, pooling sovereignties to regain influence in the world stage. Our unity is our strength. But we have to ask ourselves, pooling our sovereignty to do what? What do we want to achieve? That's what I was saying at the beginning. We are a player in search of identity. We have to ask this. Do we want to be a player or be a playground? If we want to be a player, what kind of a player? And this becomes difficult to answer because Europeans, we have different stories, histories more than stories. We have different histories and have to build a common story. And these different histories have shaped our different visions of the world. And as a result, we don't have a common strategic culture. Let me give another example. I am a Spaniard. I was born after the Second World War, and I lived most of my youth under a military dictatorship, thanks to the Catholic Church and the United States, because both the Vatican and the States were supporting our dictator, General Franco. But by the contrary, my Polish friends believed that they owned their freedom to the Catholic Church and to the United States. It's funny, but it's true. But if you believe that you have been living under military dictatorship thanks to the same one that other believes that they own their freedom to the same people, it's very difficult to share the same vision of the world. Very difficult, almost impossible. And under these circumstances, we have to forge a common understanding of the world, overcoming our history. And there comes the difficulties. We have to build story, overcoming our past histories. And that's why, by the moment, our common foreign policy is not a unique foreign policy. And it will take quite a long time to have. Just think how long did it take to pass from a common currency, the ECU, to the unique currency, the euro, from the common but not unique to the unique. How long did it take? More than 25 years. And pooling sovereignty around currency, it's much less difficult than pooling sovereignty about defense or foreign affairs, where the core of the identity of each country is very well reflected. But today we have to do it because we are living in a new bipolar system, and if we don't do anything, we will repeat the same way where we were living after the World War, in a kind of bipolarity of two big powers confronting each other. Today, power politics means that international law is undermined, that there are fewer agreements and more vetoes, that the territorial integrity of sovereign states is being violated, that non-proliferation and disarmament systems are threatened. How can we prevent power politics from becoming the organizing principle of international relations? The answer is clear: through multilateral rules. The multilateral rules that have been built with difficulties should not only be protected, but multiplied in order to guarantee the security of the international orders. In the current world, If we want to be able to take our destiny in our hands, Europeans are beginning to realize that we have to learn to talk the language of power, because being a soft power is not enough. Our values and our interests reflect what we are, our history, our preferences, our strategic, political, economic choices. Europe needs to be more assertive to defend all of them. Otherwise, the law of the jungle will prevail, and we do not want that might replaces right. Multilateralism is under siege. All of us know it. But we must hold tight and actively promote it. Let's defend international law, be it in the United Nations, Convention of the Law of the Sea, humanitarian international law, or the architecture of non-proliferation. Europeans want to prevent a race towards nuclear proliferation in the MENA region. Thanks to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, everybody's talking about it those days. Thanks to this agreement, today, Iran is not a nuclear power. And just imagine the situation if Iran would be today a nuclear power. Those who want to kill this agreement, claiming that they can negotiate a better one, better for whom, should bear in mind that it took 12 years to negotiate it, and that this nuclear deal succeeded in making the world a safer place. And in this context, I have to regret once again the US decision to withdraw unilaterally from the nuclear deal with Iran. Today, those days, the 3 European member states participating in JCPOA, France, Germany, and United Kingdom, have invoked, a few days ago, the dispute resolution mechanism concerning the implementation of Iran's commitment under this deal. However, let me underline, as recently as at our meeting of Foreign Affairs Ministers last week, that the European, all of us, reaffirmed the need to maintain alive this deal, knowing very well how difficult it would be to build another one. In today's world, great powers tend more and more to use the tools of the everyday life, trade, for example, in order to convert in a weapon. Everything is being converted in a weapon. Trade agreements, technology, currency devaluations, all of them at the service of the quest for power. They become political tools. They have always been political tools, but today they're becoming more and more weapons on the soft meaning of the word, but really something that you use in order to enhance your power. Technology is the big word that's going to be decisive on shaping the new global order. It has always been like this. Technology ruled the world. As the Watt steam engine resulted in Europeans leading the first industrial revolution in the 19th century, the country today that controls 5G and artificial intelligence, or the Internet of the Things, and sets the world digital standards, will lead the world. And some big powers, like China and the US, have clearly understood that. This is the reason why they are in a race to be the masters of the new waves of technologies. And we Europeans cannot accept the idea that the world should organize around a new Chino-American bipolarity, which would come to replace, after 30 years of transition period, the Soviet-American bipolarity that literally divided Europe. On this point, I believe that there is a real political convergence between Europe and many countries of this region. Call it Indo-Pacific or Asia-Pacific, doesn't matter. Everybody knows what I am referring to. Many of the countries of this region, including for sure India, but Japan, Australia, Vietnam, among others, share this feeling. That's one of the reasons why it's so important that I am here today to talk about how can we work together. How can Europe and India work together for multilateralism? Once again, let me give you some examples. Both Europe and India have a major interest in guaranteeing the survival of the World Trade Organization, which is strongly being jeopardized today. And the blockade of the settlement dispute mechanism is extremely worrisome for us, for India, for many of the countries in the Southeast Asia, and for Europe. We have made proposals to break this deadlock. And knowing India's strong attachment to the WTO, I know that we can work together on this issue in practical and effective ways. A second area in which we could strengthen our cooperation is maritime security. For more than 10 years now, European Navy, European Operation Atalanta, has worked to counter piracy in the Horn of Africa. And it has been a huge success, bringing down acts of piracy to just 2 attacks in 2018 and 1 in 2019, coming from almost 200 in 2010. The key feature behind Atalanta's success is the fact that actions offshore are coupled with actions onshore of justice reform, alternative livelihoods, to address the root causes of piracy. If we do not work in an integrated way, we are just treating symptoms, but not facing the illness. And Operation Atalanta was a good example of cooperation among many countries, among them India. The relationship between India and Europe must become more strategic in view of the importance of the, call whatever you want, Asia or Indo-Pacific region. That's why it is essential that we develop a new roadmap for our strategic partnership in the 2025 horizon, covering cooperation in areas from security to digital or climate change. Negotiations for this roadmap started just yesterday, and I hope they will be ready to be approved on the next summit, India-Europe, on the 13th of March. Among them, the defense and implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement is of particular importance, given India's great ambitions in terms of renewable energy, but also of the big needs that you have to satisfy on energy supply to your growing population. We are facing a true climate crisis, everybody knows. We literally have no time to lose. We have, on these days, recently stated a strong commitment for Europe to become carbon neutral by 2015, what we call the Green Deal, but maybe more than a deal is a will. Let's call it a green will. And this will have to be shared by the rest of humankind, because we Europeans, we represent only today 9% of the world emissions of green gases, 9%. Even if tomorrow we were able to cancel absolutely all our emissions, the problem would not be solved, because there is still 91% produced by the rest of the world. So either we are able to engage, all of us, in this process, sharing different responsibilities but acting together, or our effort would be a good example of willing of transformation, but not being enough. The example of the conference in Madrid shows how much more remains to be done. In 2016, Prime Minister Modi and European leaders agreed on a European Union-India cheap clean energy and climate partnership. And today we are working together on an international solar alliance headquartered here in India. And last, another example of European Union-Indian cooperation is counter-terrorism. I had the pleasure of having a meeting some hours ago with the responsible of national security advisor of India, and talk about it. Last month, we organized here in Delhi an European Union-India counter-terrorism workshop on investigating the ISIS networks. This two-day workshop brought together India and European experts and focused on capacity building of the Indian state police services to deal with the growing threat emanating from terrorism network trying to infiltrate here in Southeast Asia countries. All of that is part of a new system of global governance. I believe it is important to listen all the voices of countries like India, which will soon become the most populated country in the world. 2022 will be an important year for India. You will celebrate the 75th anniversary of your independence and hold at the same time the presidency of the G20. Let's use this time in the run-up to 2022 to listen to your views in how should the world would like on this century, and that can be done together. In a world full of challenges that travel without passports and know no borders, our cooperation to defend a rules-based multilateral order is more necessary than ever, because no country is isolated, big, strong enough to be apart from these challenges. Challenges to our peace, our freedom, and our prosperity. That is our common endeavor. That's our common purpose. That's our common work together. Thank you.